Women all over the world are championing environmental initiatives, activating change, and nurturing our environment like one of their own brood. Entrepreneurial Women with Purpose are celebrating women across Marlborough, New Zealand, who are leading our community as environmental guardians. Our podcasts are full of action-oriented takeaways, so be sure to have your journal as we delve into their stories and celebrate their passions. Welcome to Entrepreneurial Women with Purpose. I'm Catherine Vandermeulen, and joining me on today's podcast is Dr. Kate Averill, founder of Inclusive Sustainable Development and a leading member of the Climate Action Marlborough Steering Committee. In this podcast series, we are celebrating women who are environmental guardians and leaders in Marlborough who are actively creating positive environmental impact through their work, community projects, and passion projects. How are you, Kate?
Very well, thank you, Catherine.
So tell us, who is Dr. Kate Averill?
Okay, so I'm passionate about the outdoors and communities. I've had a lifelong interest in nature and landscapes and conservation and sustainable development. And it started really with studying geography, both physical and human geography at university, and then becoming a mountaineering guide and an outdoor education teacher, sharing the outdoors and personal adventures with young people and personal development programs. And it's evolved over time into living and working in different cultures and environments, and got really interested in strategy about sustainable development and what does that mean for people and the planet. So it's been a journey, and it still is. And I've moved down to Marlborough about 3 years ago, and living in a community and beautiful environment and making connections.
Absolutely. And so, Kate, what was your call to adventure to do the meaningful work that you do today through inclusive sustainable development?
It's really based around values, about looking at what we value, and that was part of my PhD interest, was what is important to communities, what is important to people, and through that, then what does that mean for how we work with the environment, socially, and the governance side about taking care of businesses and organisations. So it's been from a background in environmental and social to strategy, and really working now with getting businesses and organisations to articulate clear sustainability goals, what they're working towards, and measure progress. So it's not just talking about it, it's actually what are you doing and what impact is it having?
And so, what are you most passionate about as an environmental guardian?
Really, it's about regions and communities working together. And I love it when you see communities come together and they're looking at what can we do with the environment, how can we work together, look after our people. And from there, then work out activities and then look at the impact and see the impact that changes over time.
And why is it important for all of us to take that leadership and to protect our environment rather than waiting for somebody else to do it for us?
Yeah.
Why do we need to take that leadership?
Well, I think it's urgent, and this is something that by us all being proactive, and we've got only one planet, and it's biodiverse, and it's got limited natural resources, and we've, by our human activities, have degraded it and impacted, and it can't continue. We're using over 5 times more resources than what the planet has. So for future generations, and for now, we're seeing fires, we're seeing floods, the climate's changing because more moisture in the atmosphere, that we've all got to do something and act now and every day, every place, activities, and thinking about how we can reduce and reuse. So it's up to all of us to ensure that we're impacting sustainably and regenerating and leave the world a better place for future generations.
Tell me, what does the word regenerating mean to you? Because everyone has such a different view on this magical word.
Well, it means looking at what was the land use, what could it be now, and what can you do to enhance the environment? Is it, and being aware of that, how you're using the environment. So it may mean some planting in some areas. It could be using different approaches. But it's a key word. I was thinking about this, and I think the word restore is a way that where can we restore? Where can we make a difference? So we're not just talking about sustainable use, we're actually looking at restoring nature. And then with that, for example, if you plant some native plants in swamp areas, the birds come, and that's about restoring. So I think it's not a word to be scared about, but it's about where can we leave the environment better than what it is now. But we do have to acknowledge that we need to think about what we're doing and how we're doing things, and change in many areas. And that is happening already. But the pace is not up to a level where it's going to make a big enough difference. We're going to have more impacts unless we pick up the pace and take more action.
More and larger scale action. Do you think that the restore, like if we think about sustainability, and it's a word I want to use less because I don't think we can sustain the current status quo, restore and regenerate, is restore a stepping stone to regeneration? Because regeneration feels like it's more, it's moving, where restoration, it feels quite grounded, and getting it to a level of restoration before we can move to that regeneration.
Yeah, it's interesting because human activities change over time, and the ways we do things with technology changes. So I think it comes back to the values that we have, and looking at where are we in our communities, in our homes, in our local communities, in our regions. What's needed? What could we do together collectively? And could we restore areas? Could we look at how we're using the land, or how we're including people and welfare? So I just think it's important that we need to acknowledge that we need to address that we've gone past the point where we've degraded the environment. So we need to have in our approaches, our thinking and our actions about restoring and caring, and that it can be continued in a way that doesn't degrade the environment. And we've got some catching up to do. You know, we've got biodiversity's affected. But the thing that I find the most positive is that we can make a difference. It doesn't take too much. And we've got so many examples of where down in Canterbury, where they've restored a corridor for birds from the Alps right out to the estuary, and native bush, and the bird life, and the place to go for people. And it's about looking at what we can do and where we can do it in a way that enhances how we live in our communities.
And so, what have been some of the key learnings that have changed your perspective along the way?
I was reflecting on this, and I think for me is that we can make a difference, and with collective activities An example that I was thinking was that we had the Enterprise Challenge Fund, which were businesses in Southeast Asia and the Pacific. And we had about 30 businesses that all identified areas that they could improve, enhance the environment. It was across sector, solar energy, hydro energy, tourism and villages, and agriculture, about growing vanilla and promoting and selling that in a sustainable way. So because there was a bit of structure, a bit of goals, and people said that they planned and then they measured, and then we got together at 6 monthly, we could see the progress from where people started to where they got to in 6 months, into a year, into 18 months. And in 4 years, we could really see the difference in the environment and for people. So it's possible. And I do think it just needs a bit of thought and structure without being too structured, and that we can do this in groups within our communities, within our regions.
And Kate, what has been the proudest moment for you on this journey?
I think seeing people's faces and hearing their pleasure when they realise that they're doing some of this already. And when I'm talking with businesses and organisations about what are you doing for the environment already? What are you doing socially? And what could you do going forward? And they start to think, oh, we could do this and we could do this. And then when you check back in with them, that they're already making progress. And so I just think people are underway already, and it's seeing their pleasure that they can see a pathway and a way that they can do this.
And what does a good ancestor mean to you? Being a good ancestor, sorry, Kate.
Intergenerational. I think Te Punu Pono was intergenerational. We've got future generations, the land, the environment, the Te Ao Māori worldview, it's all holistic. And we need to hand down through generations and look after it and leave the world, leave it in a better place, rather than used up, and then future generations have got struggles. And I think this is part of it. What is it that we need to be doing now in our communities so we can have this intergenerational well-being in our environment?
And if it is about future generations, what is the role, when you talk about intergenerational, what is the role that our past generations of older people in our community, of their role that they can play in sharing knowledge and teaching our next generation? How could that work from a community perspective and valuing that knowledge of other generations in our community?
I think it's really important. I'm involved with the community garden here in Seddon in Marlborough, and the people who started the community garden, their knowledge of gardening and about the environment and a way of growing and using and producing for others is so rich, and I'm learning from them. And when I go back to my grandparents, they grew vegetables. They didn't buy plastic. It wasn't available. They reused. And I feel that as our generations now, we've got used to this being immediately available. So drawing on that knowledge and that experience about ways of doing things, and how could they, and what did they used to do, and how did they do that? And I'm certainly learning through that experience of working alongside people in the gardening and in the involving the community. So I think it's so important because they have that history. They don't have that that you just go to the supermarket and pick everything up now idea, and that this is part of behaviour change, that we can learn how things were and how things could be.
I always remember going along to my first CKM, which is our Climate Action Marlborough meeting on a Sunday afternoon, and it was a collective of probably 20 or 25 people around the room, and everyone went around and introduced themselves and shared what they were passionate about. The knowledge that was in that room, and I would say that the average age might be between 60 and 70 years old. And I just thought, wow, there is so much rich knowledge in this one space. We need to make sure that we can collect and learn and be passing this on to the next generation. So I found that incredibly rewarding, as you do in the community garden in Seddon.
Yeah.
So the Marlborough Economic Wellbeing Strategy is focused on a thriving economy balanced with a nourishing environment and vibrant communities. What actions are you taking to achieve this, Kate, through your work?
For me, it was about moving from a city and out to a region, and to a region that is vibrant and active, and finding ways that I could contribute. So for me, it's been about collecting surplus, and we have a community market every month, and that I hold a stall, or we hold a stall there, and people can come and get vegetables for just a donation. So it starts with doing things small, and then looking at how can we involve the community, so in the wider community in the valley. So I think it's being local, and then in a regional way, being involved with Climate Action Marlborough, for me, really resonated with my values and passions, and want to contribute. That if we thoughtfully and consider how we can plan and what we can do within the region, then I think we've got a real opportunity to be leading an example. But at the end of the day, is that we can make a difference to this region in different sectors, and people are aware and sharing knowledge. So it's sort of two areas, local and regional. But I've also got an interest in the national level, is that I really feel that we need to have a country plan. We need to have more views about how Aotearoa New Zealand can develop a sustainable develop sustainably. And what does that mean? And I think it starts in regions. What does that mean for Marlborough? And that's the strategy, but what does that mean in local areas? So I just encourage people to get really more specific, because then you can see whether action is having an impact. And so that's an area that I'm really passionate about.
And I love that you talk about local being Marlborough, but Marlborough in itself covers a large area of the top of the South. And I think your idea around that kind of hyper local, in terms of the community that you live and breathe every day by default of where you live, I think that's really important as well, because we've been teaching students through a program called Girls Who Grow down in Otago. And we try to tell them that we don't need to take on the entire world of coming up with, overcoming the challenges of the world. We can overcome the challenges and support what's going on in our very hyper local community of the 10 houses that are around us, or the 10 properties that are around us, or, one small community within Otago. So it doesn't have to be that we want to take on all of the world's problems, but if we just focus on our individual and hyper local, then we can start to expand that out to other regions, and teaching and sharing into other regions as well.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. It's the sharing. I think, what people are doing and what difference it's making. and having access to that information and people contacts, because we can then learn and collaborate with each other. So I do think that what works in one environment could work in another. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of words and a lot of jargon in this, and I think it comes down to is what's needed, what could be done, what is being done, and what impact is it having. And I expect to see that within 6 months, 3 to 6 months, you can see impact and measure it. And I think that's where I would like to see us getting more focused, is talk and learning's great, but actually what action and what difference did it make?
And what's your big picture vision for the community of Marlborough?
Being inclusive and looking at what does good look like for the wine industry and for the communities, and for us to then really look at how it's progressing and what could be adapted as we go. I think Marlborough is an exciting place to be. It's productive. It contributes a lot to New Zealand's economy, and the well-being of people is important, and the environment. So I think leadership, collaboration, and action are the three things that really make a difference, and that not having it too fragmented. I think having a wider group going, okay, what does good look like for Marlborough? And it's evolving, and Marlborough's changed over time, and the tourism and with the different industries. And I think having those conversations and looking at the progress is really important as a region.
And finally, Kate, what are 3 actions that our listeners can take from this discussion to embed into their own worlds?
I think the first part, and this is for, I think it comes back to, what is your household doing? What is your business doing? What waste? What's your carbon footprint? Where are you now in terms of what resources do you use? And that's the first thing, is knowing where your household and business is now. And then thinking about, okay, what could we do to improve, enhance, restore as a household, as a community, as a business. So knowing what's important that will make a difference, and then actually documenting and sharing progress with others, because then you start to have that collective and collaborative, and it means that people, oh, that's important to you. Oh, you're doing that. I could do that. So it's that sharing about what you're doing at your local and at your community and your regional level. And I think just by being proactive and contributing, we can all make a difference. Households, local communities, and in the region.
And I guess it's really about everyone then, if you do share that everyone is also able to support and keep you accountable to what you're working to achieve, and which is something that I truly love about the work that we've been doing with Climate Action Marlborough, is about that connection and about that collaboration and accountability and supporting everyone along that way, because we are all on the same learning journey. No one is there. No one, not even in Patagonia, who's been in this space for a very long time and been taking action for a very long time in this space. They are absolutely not perfect, and they have still got a huge amount of work to do. So making sure that everyone is on that same journey. But thank you, Kate, so much for sharing your world and your wisdom with entrepreneurial women with purpose.
Thank you very much, Catherine. It's a pleasure.
This podcast is proudly supported by Yealands Estate Winery. Yealands lead the world in sustainable wine production. We're the first winery in the world to be Toitū Carbon Zero certified from inception. Use grape prunings to heat water, miniature sheep to reduce mowing, and one of the largest solar arrays in New Zealand. With a rigorous biodiversity plan in action, Yealands are on a mission to plant 1 million native trees and become an eco-sourcing hub for the region. We are grateful for the support of Yealands to celebrate these women in our wonderful community of entrepreneurial women with purpose.